What is an unusual habit you do or an absurd thing that you love?
Oh my gosh. Well, I love Frank Zappa, but that's absurd. And
Fade in. Cut to.
Exterior. Interior.
Restaurant?
Bar. Club.
Day.
Night.
Action.
Welcome, everyone, to Restaurant Fiction. This is the show, this is the podcast where we review the fictional restaurants, bars, and clubs in TV and film. And then we bring on either the showrunner, the director, the iconoclast, the icon, the celebrity chef, the creative who has had a say or is so passionate about the fictional restaurant, bar, and club that they just have to talk about it. And we say yes, including today's guest. This is part two of part one, obviously. And today's guest, this episode's guest is Simon Majumdar. Who is Simon Majumdar? Well, you know him from Tournament of Champions. That's right, on the Food Network. You know him from a slew of Food Network shows. I mean, he's all around the globe. He eats the globe. In fact, he has the best food podcast, food show, it's called Eat My Globe. I mean, literally, he eats the globe. No, he doesn't eat the globe. It's called eatmyglobe.com. I mean, check it out. I mean, it started as a little blog and it has blossomed over the 2 decades. And he is a dear friend. We asked him once upon a time, it was like maybe 2 months ago, hey, you want to come back on Restaurant Fiction? Hopefully you had a good time for, when you were on this show, because it was an amazing show you were on Restaurant Fiction a few years ago. And he said yes. And we smiled and we thank him. Anyway, it's such a good episode. We had to split it into 2 parts. This is the to be continued. So I think part 1 ended with to be continued ... Now it's ... Let's go. Fade in, from fade to black to fade in. Anyway, we are talking... The fictional restaurant we are talking about is Maximal. Where is Maximal featured? It is featured in the Ali Wong show on Netflix called Always Be My Maybe. It is in one of the most integral scenes in that entire movie. Check it out. Anyway, this is our continued conversation with Simon. All things Always Be My Maybe. All things Eat My Globe. All things Simon Majumdar. And of course, Restaurant Fiction. Oh. My name is Monis Rose. Did I introduce myself? Anyway, not important. Let's go. Have you read that book on cod?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because when you were just describing to us your love, your devotion to fish and chips, I mean, just in with your podcast, you do take a deep dive into the history of a dish, but we just
Can we give it a name? Eat My Globe.
Yes, please. Eat My Globe. Thank you for the show.
Sorry, I'm just giving it a name.
Yeah.
In case anyone was hoping to listen to me.
Watch and listen to Eat My Globe with Simon Majumdar. I mean, it is a deep dive, but particularly, we read that. We had no clue of the importance of cod. I mean, the original pretty much fish used for fish and chips hundreds of years ago. I mean, this fish is pretty much, it made our current world go round, basically.
It was an important fish, which is, if you think about the fish and chips we have, so in the north of England, we tended to use haddock. It's where the the schools of that fish came in the north, and in the south you had cod, because that's where the schools of those fish, if that's the right word, schools of, came in. But that, and again, you can look at, in fact, my very first episode of the podcast that I did was on the history of fish and chips. and fish came from Portugal, the fried fish. On the Friday, they would make it, and then they would leave it to go cold. And in fact, the batter for a lot of them would be thrown away. It protected the fish, but then was thrown away. And the fish came from there, and the chips came from Belgium. Now, it was part of France at those days, hence the French fries. And in fact, the French fries came over to the US. Thomas Jefferson brought it over, started cooking them, and having his kind of, I hate to say it, but he was a man who enslaved people and had his cooks from there cooking these chips, or French fries as you call them. And so, but what happened is the Portuguese came into London about the 1300s, 1400s, and then the Belgian or the French came into London at the same time. They lived in the east end of London, which is where Jack the Ripper was, where all of that was. And they were both carrying the trays around selling fish or selling chips. And one of them, I can't remember, I think his name was Mason, in 1850, began to was marrying another person who sold the opposite. And so they, in their own apartment or their own flat, they started to sell them together. And that's in 1850, I think, maybe 1860. And they started selling them together. And that was the beginning of fish and chips. So anyway, I always tell these stories because I love these stories, because you're going, fish and chips seems like such a British dish, but it isn't. It's Portuguese and it's France or Belgium. And you're going, that's great. That is a great story. Anyway.
I love that. I love that. On the Food Network, you have played a commentator.
Yes.
You played a judge and a contestant.
Yes.
What's your favorite role to play?
I love, right now, we'll talk, we can't say too much about Tournament of Champions because it's on at the moment, but I love being a commentator because what I'm doing is looking at the food, and it could be, Asian, it could be, what can it be? It could be, European style, it could be all these different things, and I have to know about them. And that is what I do. That's what I love about history. I have to know when someone says to me, oh, did you know that pepper, which we now put on the counter with salt, is, and that's how valuable or regular it is to our meals. The pinch of salt and the pinch of pepper, you finish every meal with. But that was the most, both the salt and the pepper were the two most important seasonings in the world in Roman times. So that's what I love doing. I love to see them, what they're putting on, but then turning to the camera or turning to whoever and going, did you know this? And I love that. I love giving them my experience of food and also my travels around the world. Going, oh yes, the tandoor comes from Turkey, and then it went on the spice trail to India, where it became, went through Persia, went through wherever, and ended up in India, where it's become the most, it's become the thing that everyone thinks of being an Indian restaurant, but an Indian an Indian centerpiece. But it's we saw it when we were in Armenia, and it's a clay oven buried in the ground, and you're going, and they call it a tandir. You think that doesn't relate? Of course it does, and it came from there. So I love stuff like that, where I can say, oh, I saw it there, and I saw it in India. I love that. I really do. Which again, it's making me really, I'm almost watering at the thought of all these dishes going around the world, and I love making a link between them. If you look at pilau, and you look at pulao, and you look at paella, and you look at all these these are all linked by the trail of rice. And it's all from Turkey, from China, and they all mix. And I love that paella and pulao have a link. Now, they might now be very separate dishes, but there is a link between them, and I love that. You can tell I love that. But that's why history is so important. So important.
If you were to choose advice from either your 18-year-old self or your 90-year-old self, and your 90-year-old self is lucid, healthy, coherent, who would you choose to choose advice from?
And I'm sorry, but this is a kind of question where I go both, because when I was 18, I was always go out there and, see the world, and because your life will be over like this. And I always remember that. I always was talking to my father, who at the time was 40, or no, probably 30 something or 40 something. And me thinking that was the end of the world, 40 something. I mean, that's 20 years ago now. I'm going to be 60 soon, in about 2 weeks. And I suddenly will go, wow, how has that happened? And that's something that I would find out as well from the 90-year-old, going, you've still got a lot of time ahead of you. And that's important. But if I listen to both, I'd do well. And saying I have to listen to one is not possible for me. I just don't think so.
So if pretty much what you're saying, if your 18-year-old self, basically, to summarize, said to you, see the world, and your 90-year-old self said to you, still got time left, keep going. What advice would both your 18-year-old self and your 90-year-old self tell you to ignore?
Oh, gosh. They might tell me to stay at home. Because they go, oh, you need to settle down. You need to... No, what I needed to do was to find a wife who said, what you want to do is what I want to do. Let's go to the stars. Let's go to... And she comes with me. And that's the thing. I've now found the perfect person in the world to come with me. And she is, and I'm not just saying this, and hopefully, she'll listen to this. She will listen to this. While I'm here, she is sitting down in her bed with the computer in front of us, doing all of the restaurants, all of the in the stands, all of where we stay. I don't even think about it now. She's doing all of that, and she's doing spreadsheets and booking flights and organizing trains and doing everything, and I mean everything. And I don't even have to think about it apart from going, what about this restaurant? Or I hear this one is good. And that's amazing. I used to do all that myself, 20 years ago. And she's doing every bit of it because she loves doing that. She loves it, and she's got so many spreadsheets. And I love eating, so that's how it works. She is absolutely the best. She really is.
Maximal, and every dish inside Maximal, presented on screen and even in the imagination of us at Restaurant Fiction, has a story. All of the dishes that you described so far in reality, whether it be the fat duck, whether it be enigma, whether it be the stans, whether it be et cetera, have a story. How important is the story with food?
Oh, it's everything. Whether it's the history of the story, the actual history of, I talked about fish and chips earlier, whether it's the story of the chef and how he or she created this dish, how the people who ate it had a story, why they came there. I mean, when I go to a restaurant, I'm always looking around at what brought those people to this restaurant. And I'm always thinking about what it is in their head that didn't just tell them to go here, it told them to go here. And yes, it may be that they couldn't get into any other restaurant, or they couldn't, they want, but the thing that brings them to this restaurant at the same time I'm going. And so I'm always thinking about that. So there's always a story, and I'm always writing down in my notepad about people who came into restaurants, and I'm going, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why they came in. Might be the star, might be a superstar. And I might go, that's interesting. I won't bother them during the meal, but I will afterwards go, that's interesting. So I think the story is really important. It's got to be as important as the food. It really has. And I love that. I love that about food. I really do. And food, I'll tell you a story just for me. When I was in Marrakesh and I was going to Fez, and I was going on an 8-hour journey on the train, and it's one of those, it was like a Harry Potter cubicle, those that he always, went in. And I went in and thought, I've got no food. I forgot to bring any food. And apart from half a tin of Pringles and half a bottle of Diet Coke, which are not a lot to last you 8 hours. And then suddenly 8 people came in. They were a family, and with their mothers and grandmothers and sons and all of they all came in. And then while they looked at me and they said, "Do you speak Arabic?" And I said, "No, but in Morocco they speak French." And I went, "Oh, okay." And they said, "Do you have any food?" And I said, "No." And they just looked at me and said, "We do." And they got out, they created this table thing that they had to look, I don't know exactly how they created it, put a tablecloth on it, and started out getting food from these bags that they had with them, and pushed all the nice bits of it towards me and for me to eat. And that's a story, because they started speaking French for me. They started pushing all the nice bits, which was an Arabic thing, getting the good bits to the guest. And I'm still in touch with 3 or 4 of them on Facebook. And it was nearly 20 years ago. And I think, what a story. What a story for me to write about, which I did, but to write about these people as well, that they're still in. I haven't seen them since, but it's been with these people. And so every story I hear or write, whatever, it's phenomenal, and it's only unique to me. That's what I write about, things that are unique to me. And I love that. Sorry, I'm just getting ready to cry now.
No,
I'm not.
That was beautiful. This is a tough one, but funny one. And care to pass if you want. Just get to know you. What is an unusual habit you do, or an absurd thing that you love?
Oh my gosh. Well, I love Frank Zappa, but that's absurd. And I don't know whether that to be. That's interesting. And a habit that my wife have, we just lie in bed watching the telly, not chatting to each other. Just it's what we do is so. What's the word? We're enjoying being with each other so much. I bring her in dinner. We don't say it, but the fact that I bring her in dinner, put it in front of her on a tray, and it's usually her food. Schnitzel is her favorite food, and I might make that once a week. I bring it in. I don't say anything to her. I put it in front of her. I put it in front of me. And we don't say anything to anyone. We don't even say it to ourselves. And my wife knows that I love her because of that schnitzel. And I just, again, food. How can you beat it? You can't really.
I would love, how much detail can you give us on your last meal? So you said you would like it to be fish and chips, but how specific? So will the chips be the 3 times fried by from the fat duck? Will the fish be haddock or will it be cod? Like, how descriptive can you be on your?
Oh, I could be very descriptive.
Go.
From a restaurant in Whitby, it would be not the fat duck type of chips. It would be the big, fat, beautiful chips that come from the Magpie Cafe. It would be a huge hunk of haddock in this case, because haddock is what I always ate. It would be curry sauce that they always serve in a little container there, which is this thing that they only serve in British chippies. You pour it over the chips, not over the fish, but over the chips, and it tastes phenomenal. You'd have another thing of mushy peas. I don't know if you've ever tried mushy peas, but they came from, interestingly enough, I think they came from the ballast of ships. And when the sea would get frozen, they would take the ballast out, boil these peas down, and they were, I can't remember what, marrow fat peas they're called. And they would form these things they call mushy peas, which sounds horrible, but I love it. I'd have a thing of, not ketchup. It would be a thing of HP sauce, means Houses of Parliament sauce, brown sauce, because it was particularly popular at the Houses of Parliament. And that would be it. And it would be everything about it. The batter on the fish would be so crunchy. And the only other thing I'd have is if I wanted what are called scraps, the bits of the fish, the bits of the batter that are in the oil, you'd get those scraped up and you'd put them on the side. And that's the thing that when I went to any restaurant when I was a little kid, they'd always come round the queue. We always have a queue in London, in northern restaurants, and they'd give us a thing of these free, these batter scraps, and you just eat them. And that whole thing, it would be so lovely for me. That would be ace. As we said in the north, that'd be ace, that. And we would have those batter scraps, and then we'd go into the proper meal. We'd take that home, and you'd have it on a plate, and it would just be the most lovely, fantastic dish ever. Because I can't have it without my mum and my dad being there. So it will never be the same.
Simon, because I am the creator of restaurant fiction, I get to greenlight when guests can come back. And you, my friend, I mean, you're welcome back anytime, every time. I mean, it just gets better and better and better. But I will say, if you want to hear more about Simon and how awesome Simon is, I mean, listen to part one. Part one, if you haven't watched already, if you haven't listened already, please listen. And of course, he was on our podcast a while back. It was a few years ago. So search. We have a slew of episodes, and one of the many great ones is also with Simon Majumdar. And we can't wait for the third time you are on, my friend. All right. If you want to give Simon a shout out, I mean, he is on the Food Networks. He does food festivals and tours all around the nation, all around the country. And if you want to reach out to him, it is at Simon Majumdar. That is at SIMONMAJUMDAR. And that is pretty much on X and Instagram. But on TikTok, it is at the real Simon Majumdar. Just like for us, I believe it's real restaurant fiction. We're still playing around with our usernames, our screen names, because restaurant fiction was taken. Who took it? We're trying to build the hashtags anyway. You found us. Please like and subscribe if you liked it. Please subscribe, comment. My name is Monis Rose. Email monis@restaurantfiction.com. If there is a restaurant you want us to cover that we haven't covered, please give us a shout. If there is a guest you want to come on, whether that be a celebrity chef, a showrunner, or a director, please let us know. We're out there. Anyway, nothing makes sense and nothing ever does.